If you're thinking about buying a house, it's pretty easy to start your search online. You can hop on Zillow or Redfin, see what's available, what's been sold, and get a feel for pricing without ever having to talk to anyone. And the same thing goes with cars. Car Gurus and a dozen other sites out there have opportunities for you to see inventory, ranges, and trade offs pretty quickly. If you ever tried to do the same thing with buying a business, you probably got frustrated really fast. Yes, there are websites where businesses for sale are listed. But if you spent any real time on them, you've probably had the same reaction a lot of people have. The information is thin and it's surface level. You might find a few high level numbers, but not enough to really understand the business. Nothing about where it's located, at least enough for you to actually do a drive by and understand the neighborhood, or whether it's actually going to be a good fit for you. It's a pretty poor way to develop clarity about what you should actually buy. And that can make it feel like you're missing something, or that you don't know what you're doing. But you're not missing anything. Those sites aren't built to help you figure out what you should buy. They're built to drive leads to brokers. Now, nobody selling their business wants the world to know it's for sale. They don't want their employees, customers, or vendors panicking before they've figured out what comes next. So meaningful information is designed to stay hidden until much later in the process. So if you think the problem is that you haven't found the right site or the right listing yet, you're probably going to stay frustrated. Because looking in more places online doesn't create clarity if you don't yet know what you're looking for. And that's the real issue. Most people assume the first step is figuring out where to look. In reality, you need enough clarity about what you want before any search strategy really works. So the question is, how do you do that without getting stuck in analysis paralysis? I think that starts with 4 exploration questions. Now, these questions aren't meant to give you perfect answers. They're meant to help you get specific enough to start learning from real opportunities instead of guessing from the sidelines. The first question is, what has to be true for this to work in my life? Now, early on, this question is mostly financial. It's not what business could become someday, but what it needs to reliably generate so you can actually focus on running it without constant pressure. There's a point where a business might be interesting, but it's simply not big enough to support you. And below that point, even a decent business can become distracting. You can start worrying about money, start making short-term decisions, and it's hard to build anything that way. So this question is really about drawing a line. What does this business need to produce at a minimum for this to be workable for you? The second question is, what can I realistically afford and support? This is where a lot of people get stuck because it's hard to answer by intuition alone. Most people know roughly what they have in savings, but that's usually only part of the picture. What matters here is understanding the full range of financing options that might be available to you, and how those options actually shape the size of business you could realistically pursue. Now, that might include SBA loans, seller financing, retirement funds, or some combination of these and others. But until you understand the landscape at a high level, it's almost impossible to know what's realistic. And this question isn't about picking the perfect capital structure right now. It's about getting oriented so you don't waste time looking at businesses that are either far too small to matter or far too big to be feasible. I've linked to a small business financing guide below that can help you start getting your arms around what's available out there. This is a good place to start. The third question is, where do you actually have an edge? This isn't about knowing an industry inside and out. An edge can show up in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it comes from understanding a business model. In fact, I worked with a client who spent years managing installation and long-term service contracts at a large company. When he looked at buying a pool company, he didn't know anything about pools, but he immediately understood the model. Install the asset, then support it through ongoing service. He knew how to manage installers and recurring work, and that familiarity gave him the confidence and clarity to move forward. Other times, the edge is your ability to grow a business. Now, there are plenty of companies out there that operate well but are stuck because the owner doesn't enjoy or isn't good at sales. If you know how to drive business development, that can be a real advantage in one of those types of businesses. And sometimes an edge can come from just deeply understanding a customer or a problem. I've seen people build great businesses simply by solving a problem that they've personally experienced. Now, the point of this question isn't to overfit the search, it's to recognize where you're actually not starting from zero. And the fourth and final question is, what is worth exploring right now, but not committing to? Now, this is the roll-up question. By now, you've thought about what a business needs to generate to be workable for you. You've also explored what you might realistically be able to afford. And you've reflected on where you might have an edge. Now, you get to put all these pieces together and form a starting point, a hypothesis. Now, this isn't a final statement about what you're going to buy. It's just a way to narrow the field. So instead of looking at everything, you can focus on a smaller band of opportunities that fit within the parameters you've identified and think are going to work for you. That might sound like exploring services businesses in a certain size range, or exploring businesses which need an owner who's strong in business development. Or it could be companies that sell to a particular type of customer. These aren't commitments, and they certainly aren't final. What they are is filters for learning. And as you explore within a narrower band, some ideas are going to gain traction, and others are going to fall away once you see the reality. That's not backtracking. That's actually how good clarity is built. So if you're feeling stuck trying to find out what kind of business you should buy, it's usually not because you're not made to be a business owner. It's usually because you're trying to search before you've built enough clarity to actually focus that search. These 4 questions, they're not going to give you the perfect answers, but they can help you get to that specific enough place to start exploring in a more focused way. Now, if this still feels a little fuzzy and you want a little more help going deeper, I have linked to a detailed guide below that actually works through how to answer these questions and how to think about them and turn them eventually into an initial set of search criteria. And in the next video, we're going to take this search criteria and talk about what we do once we have that. How do you actually go out and start looking for opportunities? And what are the different paths that people use to find the right business? Now, as usual, if you got value out of this, please like it and share it with someone you think might benefit from it. We'll see you next week. And in the meantime, I wish you the best of luck as you chase your dreams. Cheers.